All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're tackling cybersecurity, but from a different angle. We're looking at how to build a culture of awareness and resilience. The kind that turns your organization into a cyber fortress.
Sounds pretty impenetrable.
Exactly. And get this, Verizon's 2023 Data Breach Investigations report found that a crazy 74% of breaches are caused by, get this, human error.
Human error?
Yeah, human error. One wrong click or a forgotten password. Or falling for a phishing email that looks totally legit. All that can lead to, well...
Let's be honest, it can be a nightmare. Financial losses, reputational damage that takes forever to fix, legal issues, all because someone clicked on the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. So how do we move beyond just hoping for the best and actually build a cybersecurity culture that, actually works?
Right. We need to stop crossing our fingers and actually do something.
Exactly. So our source material today lays out 5 key strategies, and they're honestly pretty insightful.
Definitely not just checking boxes.
Right. We're talking about creating a real change in how people think about cybersecurity.
And the best part is that these strategies can be adapted to fit different types of companies. Different cultures, different sizes.
Yeah, let's break this down. The first strategy is about developing a strong cybersecurity strategy. I know, you're thinking, ugh, not another strategy document.
Yeah, we've all been there. Another binder to gather dust on the shelf.
Right. But this is different, I swear.
It really is. It's about really understanding what your organization is vulnerable to. So you're worried about people on the inside causing problems.
Insider threats, yeah.
Exactly. Or what about ransomware attacks? Those are terrifying.
Definitely a huge concern these days.
There are frameworks, like NIST. You can use them to figure out, systematically what your biggest risks are.
So you're saying it's about prioritizing those risks, figuring out what to tackle first.
Yes, exactly. Once you know where you're weak, then you can start figuring out specific security measures that actually address those problems, not just some generic solutions.
Right, like a tailored suit, not off the rack.
I like that analogy.
So once you have those measures in place, you need to make sure that everyone knows what their role is.
And that means people at every single level.
From the CEO to the intern.
Yep, everyone. It's about creating a sense of shared responsibility. Everyone needs to understand that they have a role in protecting the organization's data and systems.
Because if one person messes up, it can impact everyone.
Exactly.
And here's the key thing. This strategy document isn't meant to just sit on a shelf.
Oh, absolutely not.
The source material really emphasizes that it needs to be a living document, something that you review, regularly and update as needed.
Because let's be real, the world of cyber threats is constantly changing. Your strategy has to keep up.
So think of it as a dynamic playbook, ready to adjust as new threats emerge.
I like that. A playbook.
Okay, so we've got our strategy in place. Now, let's talk about cybersecurity training. We all know it's important. But those one-time training sessions can be so boring, right?
Yeah, I know.
I've literally seen people's eyes glaze over during those PowerPoint presentations.
You're telling me, and honestly, there are reasons why traditional training doesn't really stick.
What do you mean?
Well, it's often way too generic. It doesn't consider different ways people learn best.
Different learning styles.
Exactly. And it just lacks that, that engagement factor. We need to ditch this check-the-box mentality. We need a new approach.
Something more interactive, more engaging.
And something that happens all the time, not just once a year.
So how do we actually make cybersecurity training something that people look forward to?
Okay, so here's where things get exciting. Have you heard of micro-learning?
I think so.
It's basically delivering information in short, engaging bursts. People can fit it into their busy schedules,
That makes sense. People are so overwhelmed these days.
Exactly. And gamification can be super powerful. Imagine friendly competitions where people earn points for identifying security risks.
I like that. A little friendly competition never hurt anyone.
And you can even use storytelling.
Storytelling. How does that work for cybersecurity?
Well, stories make cybersecurity threats feel more real and relatable.
People connect with stories more than just, dry facts.
Exactly. They remember stories.
I've also heard about companies using simulations, to create real learn-by-doing experiences.
Oh, simulations are fantastic. They mimic real-world cyber attacks, but in a safe environment.
So no real damage can be done.
Right. And employees can see how their choices play out. It's like a flight simulator, but for cybersecurity. It helps them build that muscle memory for when it really matters.
That's a great analogy. So we've got a solid strategy, and we're making training fun What's the next step in building this cyber-aware culture?
This is where leadership has to step up. They need to walk the walk.
To show that they actually care about cybersecurity.
Exactly. If the leaders aren't taking it seriously, why would anyone else?
It's like that old saying, actions speak louder than words. But what are some specific ways leaders can show that commitment?
Well, the source material suggests a few things. Leaders can hold regular cybersecurity briefings, just for executives, and make sure that cybersecurity training is mandatory for anyone in a leadership position.
Makes sense. Lead by example.
Right. And they can host town halls, too, where they openly talk about cyber risks and, the company policies around security with everyone.
That sounds like a good way to get everyone on the same page. I actually read about a company where the CEO participated in a phishing simulation, and he clicked on a fake phishing link.
Oh, wow.
But instead of punishing him, they used it as a teachable moment. They showed everyone that even the CEO can make mistakes.
That's brilliant. It creates this environment where people feel okay admitting they messed up, and they can actually learn from it. When leaders are open about that kind of stuff, it sends the message that cybersecurity is important to everyone.
Okay, so we've got the strategy, the training, and the leadership buy-in. Now let's talk about something I find really interesting: recognizing and rewarding positive behavior. It's like, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Totally. This strategy is all about positive reinforcement.
So not just focusing on what people do wrong, but celebrating when they get it right.
Exactly. And this can actually help people feel more comfortable reporting incidents.
Because they're not afraid of being punished for making a mistake.
Exactly.
So are we talking about gold stars and pizza parties here?
Well, it doesn't have to be that elaborate. Think about things like badges, certificates, shout-outs in company newsletters, or even special badges for email signatures, to acknowledge when someone is really committed to cybersecurity.
I like that. It's all about shifting the focus from fear to empowerment. When people feel appreciated, they're more likely to keep doing the right thing.
Absolutely. It's about building pride and ownership.
And this brings us to a really interesting question that the source material asks. Do you punish your employee for falling victim to a cyber attack?
That's a tough one.
It really makes you think.
The source material makes a strong argument against punishing employees who fall victim to cyber attacks.
Really?
Yeah, it's not about letting people off the hook. It's about understanding that punishment often creates this culture of fear and silence.
People are afraid to admit they made a mistake.
Right. And that can actually make things worse.
How so?
Well, if someone's afraid to report a security incident because they think they'll get in trouble, then the problem might not get fixed.
And could lead to even bigger issues down the road.
Exactly. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug. It doesn't actually go away.
So instead of punishment, the focus should be on education and support.
Yes, absolutely. We need to create an environment where people feel comfortable admitting their mistakes and learning from them.
What do you think about how different approaches to those employee errors can really impact the workplace?
Oh, it's crucial. If there's trust and people can talk openly about mistakes, they're more likely to report errors and help prevent them from happening again.
I see what you mean. It's about fostering a sense of shared responsibility for cybersecurity.
Exactly. Everyone needs to feel empowered to contribute to making things more secure.
And that leads us perfectly into our final strategy.
Which is actually crucial for tying everything together.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
It's all about measuring what we're doing and continuously improving. It's great to put these strategies into practice, but we can't just assume they're working.
So we need to track how effective they are and make changes as we go.
Exactly.
But how do we measure something like cybersecurity awareness? It's not exactly a number we can track easily.
You'd be surprised. The source material suggests using things like cybersecurity awareness surveys. You can use those to figure out how well employees understand the policies and if they're actually following them.
So we're getting a sense of how well the training is sinking in.
Right. We can also track how many security incidents get reported. That tells us how quickly employees are noticing potential problems.
So it's about seeing if they're applying what they've learned.
Yes. And then there are behavioral metrics.
Like what?
We can track things like how often people reuse passwords or how many are using multi-factor authentication, and even phishing failure rates.
So we can see if they're clicking on those phishing links.
Exactly. This data can tell us a lot about how employees behave, And it can help us figure out what areas need more attention in our training.
So it's like getting a big picture view of how people are interacting with all those security measures.
Exactly. And then we can use that information to make things better.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, imagine you're tracking click rates on phishing emails, and you notice that one department keeps falling for the same type of scam.
That's not good.
No, but it tells you something important. It tells you that you need to tailor your training to address that specific vulnerability.
So it's about using data to make your approach more effective.
Exactly.
And remember, building a strong cybersecurity culture, it's a journey.
Not a destination.
It takes ongoing effort and engagement.
But it's worth it.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels like they can be a cyber defender.
And they're part of something that's making everyone safer.
I like that. So what are your thoughts on all of this? What stands out to you the most from these strategies?
That's a good question. I think, for me, it's definitely that shift from fear to empowerment. It's about creating a culture where people feel supported, encouraged to develop those good cybersecurity habits, and not constantly worried about making a mistake.
I totally agree. You know, it's interesting. All 5 of these strategies really build on each other. They're not just like random tips, you know?
They're all connected.
Exactly. Like measuring how employees are actually behaving can help you design training that people actually want to do, or how you need buy-in from leadership for any kind of positive reinforcement to actually work.
Exactly. It's a big picture approach. It recognizes that people are like the biggest risk, but they can also be the strongest defense.
So it's not just about fancy technology and firewalls. It's about getting everyone on board with cybersecurity.
Exactly. And that takes us back to that final thought from the source material. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
I like that.
It's not just the IT department's job.
Right.
It's something everyone in the organization needs to be actively involved in.
That's a really important point. Because for a long time, cybersecurity has been seen as like this super technical, complex thing that only the experts can understand.
Yeah, like it's this mysterious black box that no one else should touch.
Right. But the truth is that everyone has a role to play. We all need to protect ourselves and our organizations from cyber threats.
Absolutely. And the good news is that we are seeing a shift in how people think about cybersecurity. More and more organizations are getting it. They're realizing how important it is to build that strong culture of cybersecurity. And they're putting resources into it, training, awareness campaigns, the whole 9 yards.
That's awesome to hear, because at the end of the day, it's about making the digital world safer for everyone.
I agree.
We should all be working towards that.
Definitely. You know, if we think about the big picture here, it's clear that cybersecurity isn't just a technology problem.
It's bigger than that.
It's a business issue, it's a societal issue. It even impacts national security.
Wow, you're right.
The stakes are higher than ever, and the consequences of a security breach can be devastating.
Which is why it's so important to be proactive.
And to think holistically about cybersecurity.
We need to remember that people are both the problem and the solution.
They are.
So it all comes down to creating that culture of awareness.
Where everyone feels accountable.
And where they're ready to take action to prevent those threats.
Absolutely.
So, to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay, shoot.
Building a strong cybersecurity culture, it's a journey. It's not something you achieve overnight.
It's a constant process of learning and adapting.
It takes continuous effort, engagement from everyone, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. But it's worth it in the end.
It is.
You end up with a team that's resilient.
And ready to face those challenges head on.
And you create a more secure digital world for everyone.
Exactly.
So on that note, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What's your experience with cybersecurity awareness at your organization?
Have you faced any challenges?
What's worked well for you?
This is where the real learning happens, right? It's about sharing those real-world experiences.
Exactly. So head over to our website or our social media.
And share your thoughts.
We'd love to hear your insights and keep this conversation going.
Because remember, building a strong cybersecurity culture is a team effort. We can all learn from each other and work together to make the digital world a safer place.
That's a great point. So that's it for this week's deep dive into cybersecurity awareness and resilience. Hopefully you found it helpful and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
And we hope you'll join us next time for another deep dive.
Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and stay cyber aware. You know, we've really covered a lot of ground with these 5 strategies. It's amazing how much practical advice is packed into them.
Yeah. And for me, the most interesting thing is how they go beyond just the tech stuff. It's not all about firewalls and passwords.
It's about people.
Exactly. It's about understanding how people act, how they learn.
What makes them tick?
Yeah, what motivates them to make smarter choices about security.
Because at the end of the day, people are both the weakest link and the strongest defense.
That's true.
So if we can create a culture where everyone is aware and everyone feels responsible,
Then we can turn that human element into a real asset.
we can make it a strength instead of a weakness.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from all this?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing to remember is that building a strong cybersecurity culture, it's a journey.
Not a destination.
Right. It's not a one-time project. It's not a box you can check off your list and then forget about.
It's an ongoing process.
It requires constant attention. You need to be willing to adapt and learn from your mistakes.
Because things are always changing in the world of cybersecurity.
Exactly.
And that ties back to what we talked about earlier. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It's not just about having the best technology
Right.
or the most complex security rules.
Right. It's about people.
It's about creating that culture where everyone feels empowered, where they feel like they can actually make a difference.
Like they can be cyber defenders.
Exactly.
And when you have that kind of culture in place, you're not just protecting your own organization, you're making the whole digital world a safer place.
And that's a goal worth striving for. So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
We hope it gave you some new ideas to take back to your own organizations.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
We want to hear from you.
Share your experiences, your challenges, your successes.
What's working for you?
What isn't working?
Head over to our website or our social media channels.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Because together, we can create a more secure digital future for everyone.
That's it for this week's deep dive. Stay safe out there, and until next time, stay cyber aware.